In his briefing before the Security Council, Hans Grundberg calls for de-escalation and political talks. The U.S. envoy Tim Linderking asserts that the world is unified against Houthis. The suffering of displaced people in Ma'rib worsens as winter sets in. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rana Swaylam. The United Nations Special Envoy said on his briefing before the United Nations Security Council that military options will not result in sustainable solutions, calling for de-escalation of military activities and directly engage in UN-sponsored political talks. The Special Envoy said that the serious commitment to peace requires, at a minimum, granting unconditional and regular access to him, stressing that all communication channels need to be kept open. Grundberg said that the external actors have a responsibility to support Yemenis as they discuss and build consensus on peaceful solutions. The UN envoy said that he envisions an inclusive Yemeni-owned and internationally supported political process to support near-term solutions that sustainably ends the war and ensures Yemenis' rights.
I am deeply alarmed by the ongoing military escalation and continued violence in Yemen. Since I last addressed this council, the conflict has escalated considerably. There is a risk that this could open a new chapter of Yemen's war that is even more fragmented and bloody. This risk is acknowledged by a wide range of Yemeni and regional interlocutors. Yet, even as the conflict parties all profess to me their desire for peace, their focus remains on military options. I have been clear that military options will not result in sustainable solutions. Restraint, de-escalation, and dialogue are urgently needed now.
For his part, Ambassador Abdullah Al-Saadi, representative of Yemen, said the country is facing hard conditions due to the Houthi escalation, adding that the rebels are buying more time and violating international conventions.
The Houthi militias view these peace efforts as a tool to continue the war, to impose a fait accompli, because they believe they have been chosen by God as a superior group. These militias have used all international and regional initiatives as a tool to buy time to continue their war and their aggression on Yemen, to continue to attack Saudi Arabia with ballistic missiles and drones, and to continue to harass international organizations, humanitarian workers, and diplomatic property in areas under their control.
Special Envoy for Yemen Hans Grundberg has briefed the Council over the situation in Yemen. Grundberg shared the results of his visit to the region and reiterated concern about the Houthi rebel offensive in Ma'rib Governorate. More on this is in the following report.
The Security Council has held its monthly briefing on the developments in Yemen. Special Envoy Hans Grundberg addressed the Council while there are military and humanitarian concerns in the country. Indeed, Security Council members are interested in learning more about the strategy that Grundberg has been developing to restart a political process in Yemen. The Special Envoy has indicated his intention to create a process that is more inclusive than previous United Nations efforts, by involving more groups that will be key to the success of any negotiated political settlement. During his mission, Grundberg engaged with representatives of local authorities, political parties, business, and civil society. In addition, he conducted visits to Kuwait, Egypt, Russia, and Oman. His visit to Cairo specifically included consultations with Yemeni parliamentarians, representatives of political parties, civil society organizations, and media professionals on ways to start an inclusive dialogue addressing political, economic, and security priorities. His concern in these consultations was on immediate priorities that mitigate the impact of the war on civilians and to reach a durable and just solution to the conflict in the long run. The humanitarian implications of fighting in Ma'rib and Hodeidah governorates are also a concern for the international community. Fighting in Marib displaced more than 16,000 in November, bringing the total number of people displaced in September to 45,000. A battle or a siege on Marib city could trigger mass displacement and could increase civilian casualties. As to Hudaydah in the west coast, the shift in the front lines and subsequent fighting displaced more than 25,000 people. Among other issues on the Security Council agenda is the continuing decline of the Yemeni rial. The international community is invited to help Yemenis in facing the economic hardships that are circling their present and terrifying their future.
Kingdom of Netherlands urged all parties of the Yemeni conflict to engage fully with UN envoy to end the war. In a statement by the Dutch ambassador to Yemen, Peter Derek Hoff, he said that parties should unconditionally engage with Hans Grundberg to achieve a comprehensive and inclusive settlement that brings about a just and inclusive peace in Yemen. The United States Special Envoy to Yemen, Tim Linderking, said Houthis' acts have united the world against them. During a roundtable with the Council on Foreign Relations, the U.S. envoy noted that the Houthi militia desire for international legitimacy, but their actions on the ground united the international community position against them. Linderking stressed that the United States is focused on ending the conflict in Yemen. World-leading international non-governmental organizations called on the international community to bring an end to the ongoing violence. This came in a joint statement by Danish Refugee Council, Doctors Without Borders, Oxfam and other organizations. They called on all parties in Yemen to refrain from retaliation and to facilitate unimpeded humanitarian access. In their statement, they called for international donors to increase funds for humanitarian organizations. Day by day, the number of displaced people increases due to the escalating fighting in Marib. Displaced people face hard living conditions in the camps in and around Marib, where more than 2 million people are living in tents. The following report has more details.
In the Naqaya camp east of Marib Governorate, the displaced are crowded into tents in the middle of an open desert with a cold wind blowing from all directions. These families filled with their children from death under the weight of Houthis bombing their houses. 3 children died in this camp as a result of the freezing cold and the lack of health care. Among them the child Ammar, whose small body was unable to withstand the winter cold, and he passed away. Ammar's family did everything in their power to save their child, but to no aim.
Ammar was 9 months old. I ran on my feet to Kara Hospital trying to save him, where he was suffering from a chest infection because of the cold, and he suffocated, which led to his death. Despite medical intervention, as his body could not stand it.
We are in the Naq camp. Our conditions are harsh. We do not have blankets, no mattresses, nothing. We are 3 families consisting of 15 members in one tent, empty of any necessities. Our son died because of the cold weather, and there is nothing in our hand.
An intertwined crisis experienced by the displaced in Marib Governorate. In the Naqaya camp, the displaced lack the most basic necessity of life, such as shelter and heating means, such as blankets and mattresses to gag them and their children from death, in addition to the urgent need to provide health care for children, women and elderly people. The cycle of displacement is expanding on a daily basis, and the volume of humanitarian intervention narrows with it, while the United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees has warned that more than 2 million displaced people in Marib Governorate are in danger of their lives due to the lack of humanitarian aid and the difficulties of accessing it. More than 2 million displaced people live in Marib Governorate, which is a part of the empty quarter desert. Families are suffering, children are dying, and we're still wondering, is it going to end soon?
To that end, the Executive Unit for the Management of IDPs camps in Ma'rib called upon the United Nations and the international community to put pressure on the Houthis to stop their offensive in Ma'rib and continue deliberate attacks on IDPs to prevent new displacements. The unit also called upon international and local NGOs and all humanitarian partners working in Yemen in taking urgent action to provide urgent response to the newly IDPs and alleviate their suffering, especially with the beginning of the winter season. The government forces liberated new sites south of Ma'rib and inflicted heavy losses on the Houthi militia. A military source said that the government forces launched a large-scale attack on the Houthi militia's positions in the southern front of Ma'rib, during which they were able to purify ruling positions and inflicted the Houthi militia with great losses. The artillery of the government forces targeted separate gatherings of the Houthi militia and inflicted heavy losses on them. Simultaneously, the coalition jets carried out several raids targeting the militia's positions, reinforcements and military vehicles in separate locations in Ma'rib. The coalition in Yemen carried out 31 operations against the militia in Ma'rib and Al Jawf. The operations killed more than 210 terrorist elements of the Houthi militia. Massam Project announced it has removed more than 1,600 mines planted by the Houthi militia in various regions of Yemen during the second week of December. This brings the number of mines that have been cleared since the beginning of the Massam Project so far to about 294,000. Statistics say that around 1 million mines were planted in different parts of Yemen during the last 7 years. Coming next. Huge jubilation inside and outside Yemen as the junior national team wins West Asia Football Cup.
اضطرينا نحن نغادر من ذي وزحنا.
الله يستنقذكم يا محويتني الله يستنقذ.
Welcome back. The faculty members at the University of Aden staged their first protest. The participants stressed that they will continue their strike until the Yemeni government and the international community respond to their demands. They explained that the strike came in protest against the deteriorating living conditions of the faculty members at the University of Aden and the Yemeni citizen in general. The Yemeni oil company reduced the price of oil derivatives in line with the decrease in foreign exchange rates against the local currency. To that end, the Yemeni rial was traded at 1,335 against the US dollar in transaction. The price of the rial has dropped in recent days in light of the appointment of a new board of the Central Bank of Yemen. People in Yemen have suffered greatly since the start of the war. What makes things even worse is the collapsing economic situation. People cannot afford buying basic commodities because of the incredible high prices. The following report has more details.
The last 2 years saw a number of devastating shocks that burdened Yemen's vulnerable population and pushed the country to the brink of famine. These shocks include the currency crisis, the decline in humanitarian aid, the corona pandemic, in addition to a series of natural disasters. Each of them has aggravated the already low food security crisis. The United Nations announced that food prices in Yemen have risen by more than 90% since the beginning of this year, 2021. The World Food Programme said on Twitter that food prices in parts of Yemen have increased by more than 90% this year alone. This problem comes in light of the great collapse of the Yemeni economy, the decline in the value of the local currency, and the value of $1 reaching 1,600 riyals. The rapid rise in food prices in particular is an important factor in access to food in Yemen. The proportion of people suffering in access to food has similarly increased during the currency crisis that happened in 2018, a period that witnessed a rapid rise in both food and fuel prices. The rise in food prices affects every Yemeni family belonging to the poor and needy groups. People are suffering every day, yet no actions are being taken.
The Yemeni national junior team has won the 8th West Asia Football Championship. The team won the final match against Saudi Arabia. After the match, millions of Yemenis inside and outside have taken to the streets to celebrate this historic achievement. All Yemenis seemed unified by this event. In other words, sports have reconciled Yemenis, a thing that politics failed to do. The following report has more details.
On streets, in all squares and on rooftops, Yemenis everywhere celebrated with joy after national football youngsters won of the Asian Junior Championships in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Despite hardship, differences in the ugly war, Yemenis all celebrated as a whole unity for the outstanding performance of the youth. The national team ended difficult moments of Yemen with a much-needed win over Saudi Arabia. With a 1-0 lead by Mohammed Al-Barawani on the 46th minute and reaching the last minutes of the match, it was looking like another tricky night for the youngsters, who endured hardship of war to reach this decisive moment. Saudi Arabia scored a late equalizer in the 93rd minute of the extra time, sending both teams into penalties. The national team won by 5-4 on penalty kicks, marking the first continental title in the history of Yemen. For the first time since war, joy prevailed throughout the country. Women, children, youth, elders all turned into football fans and were united by this accomplishment. Kidnapped Sana'a people celebrated in the streets. Fireworks filled the skies. Ma'rib, Adan, Shabwa and other governorates witnessed match celebrations. In besieged Taiz, people took to the streets at night celebrating this moment.
We took to the streets to celebrate the victory of the Yemeni junior national team, which won the first football championship for Yemen. As we watched the match, and after the equalizing goal, we'd lost hope, but they proved us wrong. Taiz is celebrating and everyone is cheering today.
Our joy today is indescribable. We went out to share the joy of the national team. The team has made us happy despite the circumstances and the crisis we live in.
International blessings and congratulations filled the Yemeni arena from different regional and international actors, all praising the outstanding performance of the youngsters and the heartwarming unity that Yemenis showed in their celebrations. Sports seemed to have done better than politics to Yemenis, as it gave a glimpse of hope, happiness and unity to Yemen in time of war.
Turning to health, the National Committee Against Coronavirus announced 3 new cases of the COVID-19 in 2 governorates. Committee officials said on Twitter that 2 cases were recorded in Shabwa and 1 in Al-Bayda. Also 2 recovered cases were recorded and no death. With the current updates, the total confirmed cases are 10,075, including 1,972 deaths and 6,949 cases of recovery. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. In his briefing before the Security Council, Hans Grunberg calls for de-escalation and political talks. The U.S. envoy Tim Linderking asserts that the world is unified against Houthis. The suffering of displaced people in Ma'rib worsens as the winter sets in. This is the end of the news. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.